Okay, so female reproductive system is more complicated than male reproductive system. The reason is, you know that female reproductive system performs more functions than male reproductive system. Male reproductive system only produces sperm. That's the main function of male reproductive system. Female reproductive system produces ovum. Not only that, it is the location where fertilization takes place inside the female reproductive system, as well as the maintenance of pregnancy, right? So because of those important functions, female reproductive system is more complicated and more complex. Today first we'll talk about the parts or organs of female reproductive system. Then the primary female reproductive organs are ovaries, where the eggs are or ovums are produced. So we'll talk about the ovaries, then we'll talk about the ovulation. Remember, in female reproductive system, two cycles take place. One is the ovarian cycle and another is the menstrual cycle. So those two important cycles take place inside the female reproductive system. We'll talk about the ovarian cycle, phases of ovarian cycle, and then we'll talk about another very important structure or organ, that's the uterus. Uterus is a hollow muscular organ where the embryo grows and becomes fetus. So we'll talk about the uterus, the structure of the uterus, parts of the uterus, and what happens inside the uterus. Then we'll talk about the hormonal regulation of the ovarian cycle. Remember, both cycles, ovarian and menstrual, both cycles are controlled by the hormones, okay? Female sex hormones, so we'll talk about that. So the parts of female reproductive system are primary organs are the ovaries. In female reproductive system there are two ovaries, and accessory organs are uterine tubes, also called fallopian tubes, uterus, vagina, and external sex organs such as labia majora, labia minora, mons pubis, those structures. So here, in this picture, you see the parts of female reproductive system. So they have shown one half of the body. So this is one of two ovaries. So this is the ovary. This is the fallopian tube or uterine tube, and this is the uterus. Okay, and the vagina and labia majora, labia minora, those structures, external genitalia. Okay, so those are the parts of female reproductive system. Now, ligaments. There are a number of ligaments present in female reproductive system. Those ligaments help to hold the reproductive organs in right locations in the abdominopelvic cavity. So the ligaments hold the organs in right locations in the abdominopelvic cavity. Now, important ligaments are ovarian ligament that anchors ovary medially to the uterus. So, ovary is connected to the uterus by ovarian ligament. Suspensory ligament anchors ovary laterally to the pelvic wall. So, you know, this is the pelvic cavity and these are pelvic walls. So, the suspensory ligament, one end is attached to the pelvic wall and the other end is attached to the ovary. Okay? So, that's the suspensory ligament. Round ligament connects the uterus to the labia majora. Connects the uterus to the labia majora. Broad ligament is actually not a rope-like structure. It's rather it's a flat membrane-like structure. Okay, broad, flat, membrane-like ligament that supports uterine tubes, uterus, and vagina. Also contains the suspensory ligament. So suspensory ligament also located inside the broad ligament. So those organs, uterine tubes, uterus, vagina, and suspensory ligament, those are actually covered under the broad ligament, which is a flat membrane-like ligament. So in this picture, you are familiar with this picture already. So you see, this is the ovarian ligament, connects the ovary to the uterus. Okay. This is the suspensory ligament attached to the ovary, one end, other end is attached to the lateral wall of the pelvic cavity. Okay. And this is the broad ligament. Okay. Broad ligament, which is a flat membrane-like ligament, and it has two parts. See, the upper part is called mesosymphyx and the lower part is called mesotherium. Mesometrium. So, mesosymphyx and mesometrium. Then, this is the round ligament. If they show here, no, they didn't show the round ligament.
No, it's there.
Is there?
It's there. Under the ovary on the right side above the person.
Oh, round ligament, okay. So this is the round ligament that connects the uterus to the labia majora. Okay. So those are the important ligaments. Those try to keep the reproductive organs in right location in the pelvic cavity. So if I ask you in the test that which ligament connects which structures, you should be able to answer that. Okay, now we'll talk about the structure of an ovary. Ovary is surrounded by a fibrous tunica albuginea. You have seen tunica albuginea in the testes too. And inside the ovary, you will see clearly two regions. The outer part is called the cortex and inner part is called the medulla. And in the outer part or in the cortex, you will find many follicles. Those are called ovarian follicles. And inside the follicles, the eggs are located. So we'll see in picture, just know that in the cortical part or in the cortex, outer part contains the follicles. And in the medulla, which is the inner part, contains large blood vessels and nerves. Okay? And blood, oxygenated blood is given to the ovaries by ovarian arteries and the ovarian branch of the uterine artery. Do you remember how the abdominal aorta, the lower end of the abdominal aorta divides, right, into common iliacs, right? Then common iliac is divided into external and internal. I said that external goes to the thigh, right, femoral, and internal stays in the pelvic cavity, right? That's the smaller one. And uterine artery is a branch of the internal iliac, because at that time I said you that internal iliac goes to the pelvic cavity and supplies the pelvic organs, right? So pelvic organ is the uterus. So uterine artery is a branch of the internal iliac. Okay. Okay. So in the cortex you have follicles, and cortex of the ovary you have follicles, and those follicles are present in different stages of maturation. Some are in very early stage of maturation, some are in late stage, some are in intermediate stages of maturation. Just know that in the cortex, the follicles are present in different stages of maturation. And the eggs in the follicles, the eggs are surrounded by two types of cells. So in the follicles, you will find the eggs or ovums, and eggs are surrounded by two different types of cells, follicle cells and granulosa cells. So basically the follicle has the egg and two different types of cells that surround the egg. So here you see this is inside the ovary. So this is the cortex and this is the medulla, right? Cortex has the follicles, and you see follicles are in different stages of maturation. These are very early stages and these are late stages of maturation. Okay? So that's the cortex. And you see in the follicle you have the egg or ovum, and two different types of cells are present around the egg. And in the medulla you have the blood vessels. Okay? I will talk more about maturation of the follicles. Just know that in the cortex you have the follicles present in different stages of maturation. Okay. Okay. So what are those different stages of follicles? The earliest follicles are primordial follicles, and then next stage of maturation is primary follicles, and then primary follicles become secondary follicles. Secondary follicles then enter into late secondary follicle stage, and then the most mature follicles are Graafian follicles. So the most mature stage is the Graafian follicle stage. And now, when the follicles are in late secondary stage, fluid-filled spaces appear. So some fluid-filled cavities appear in the cells, in between the cells. And those fluid-filled spaces then fuse together to form an antrum. So antrum, first what happens, many small fluid-filled cavities appear, and then they fuse together and form a large fluid-filled cavity that is called the antrum. That makes sense? Okay, good. That happens in late secondary follicle stage. So if I ask you in the test, you must forget that. And Graafian follicle is the most mature stage, and in this stage the follicles are very soft, like heavily filled with fluid. So if you fill something with fluid, then that structure will be like a ripe fruit. Okay, very ripe fruit. So it will be very soft, lot of juice inside. So that's the Graafian follicle stage. Ovulation is the ejection of the oocyte or mature egg from the ripening follicle. So what happens next, when the follicle becomes Graafian follicle, then it is very soft, right? Like a ripe fruit, then it ruptures, and the egg or mature oocyte that comes out, okay? And that process is called ovulation. So ovulation is the ejection of egg or oocyte from the Graafian follicle due to the rupture of the Graafian follicle. Okay, so let's see what happens. So, as you know, the follicles pass through those stages, and here you see late secondary follicle, and in the granulosa cells, cavities, fluid-filled cavities appear in this stage, and then those fluid-filled cavities fuse together to form a large fluid-filled cavity that is called the antrum. Okay, and this is the Graafian follicle, most mature stage, and then the rupture of the Graafian follicle occurs. When the rupture occurs, the egg, mature egg or oocyte or ovum, whatever you say, that gets out. First, it gets out from the Graafian follicle, then gets out from the ovary. So actually, the egg not only gets out from the Graafian follicle, it gets out from the ovary, and that process is called ovulation. Okay, so ejection of the egg from the Graafian follicle and also from the ovary. That process is the ovulation. Okay, and now interestingly, what happens? You see, after the ovulation, the egg gets out, but the remaining part of the follicle will become a structure, yellow colored structure that is called corpus luteum. Okay, so the remaining part of the follicle will become the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum, luteum indicates yellow. Okay, so this structure becomes yellow colored structure, corpus luteum. Why? A lot of fat accumulates inside. That's why it looks yellow. Anyway, so that is the corpus luteum, and corpus luteum works as a temporary gland and will remain inside the ovary. How long it will remain inside the ovary and work as a temporary gland? It will remain inside the ovary for next 14 days. Okay, 14 days. If fertilization does not occur. So corpus luteum will work as what?
Temporary gland.
As a temporary gland, and will remain inside the ovary for how long? 14 days.
As long as there's no...
If fertilization does not occur. If sperm doesn't come and fertilization doesn't take place. Now, if fertilization occurs after ovulation, if sperm comes into female body and fertilizes the egg, then the corpus luteum will decide to stay there for longer time, for about 3 months. It will remain there inside the ovary and will keep working as a temporary gland. Okay? Now, the corpus luteum produces important hormones, female sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone. Another hormone that is called inhibin. So write it down. Corpus luteum works as a temporary gland and releases estrogen, progesterone, and inhibin. INHIBIN. Okay. Estrogen and progesterone, female sex hormones.
Professor, can you spell the third hormone, please, again? IMB. IN. Thank you.
So, that's the corpus luteum. So, if fertilization takes place, then how long it will stay?
3 months.
Longer, about 3 months. If fertilization does not occur, it will stay for 14 days and will be destroyed. It will be destroyed. Okay?
Destroyed or resorted?
Yeah. Say again?
Is it like pushed as?
No, it will not pull. It will squeeze and shrink and eventually will be broken into pieces and will be absorbed. Okay? It will not be pushed out. It will get smaller and eventually disappear.
Well, what's
Okay.
the purpose of it? What's the purpose of having the gland? What's the
That-
purpose of having that gland?
Yes, during the early part of pregnancy, we need those hormones to prepare the bed for the fertilized egg. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Just remember that you know that if fertilization occurs, then menstruation doesn't occur, right? Menstruation
Right,
time.
right.
So menstruation not to occur, we need those hormones to
Okay.
stop menstruation, to
Okay.
stop the destruction of the wall of the uterus.
Okay, thank you. I knew there had to been a reason to have it.
Just know that those hormones are needed
Estrogen,
to
estrogen,
yeah,
and-
preserve the pregnancy.
To preserve pregnancy.
Okay, now if you see what is happening inside the ovary, we can say that in first part, what happens? The follicles mature, right? In first part, the follicles get mature. This part or phase is called follicular phase. Very simple. The growth and maturation of the follicles. So that's the follicular phase. And then what happens here? This is what? Ovulation, right? Ejection of the egg. That is the ovulation. And then after ovulation, the corpus luteum is formed and remains there. So this part is called luteal phase. So we can say follicular phase, then ovulation and luteal phase. Right? So those are the three phases of ovarian cycle.
You say luteal or
Luteal,
luteal?
corpus luteum, luteal phase. Oh, it's not there. So the first is what?
Follicular.
Follicular.
And that's stages 1 through 4.
Then what happens?
Ovulation.
Ovulation. And then what happens?
Luteal.
Corpus luteum is formed, right? And it stays there for 14 days. If fertilization doesn't occur, so it's a luteal phase. So those are the three phases of ovarian cycle. Now, let's know that those are the three phases of ovarian cycle. And you understand why we named them like that. Okay, now we'll see the fallopian tube or uterine tube. Fallopian tube is attached to the uterus. So, two fallopian tubes are attached to the uterus, and each fallopian tube has different parts. So if you see the end of the fallopian tube has finger-like structures. These finger-like structures are called fimbriae. The fimbriae are end part of the uterine tube or fallopian tube, and that part has many finger-like structures. Okay? So it's like this. You see, if my body is the uterus, this is the uterine tube or fallopian tube, right? This is another one, and these are fimbriae. Okay? And then before the fimbriae, this part of the tube gets expanded, little bit expanded part, that is called the ampulla. Ampulla, always remember, ampulla is the expanded part of the tube. Okay, so ampulla, and ampulla is important because in most of the cases, fertilization takes place inside the ampulla, in the ampulla of the fallopian tube. Okay, so sperm, you see, sperm travels a lot, right? First it travels inside the male body and gets out, then enters into the female body and travels this way, try to find the ovum or egg, travels a lot and meets the egg here. Okay? So fertilization occurs in most of the cases. Fertilization occurs in the ampulla.
Is that because it takes a little while to make that curve? It slows down making the curve circle.
Okay?
Makes sense.
Then the part of the fallopian tube that is attached to the uterus, that part is called the isthmus. Okay, isthmus. So, you know the female, you know the ampulla, and isthmus is the part that is attached to the uterus. Now, you already know ovulation. So this is the ovary and this is ovulation. So egg will come out, the ovum will or oocyte will come out, and the female, it is very funny way. If this is the ovary, egg comes out during ovulation, and female are not physically directly attached, like moving like this, and try to capture the egg. Not necessarily it will be able to capture every time. Okay, so moving like this and try to capture and take the egg inside. Okay, so the egg will be taken inside the fallopian tube by female, and when the egg is very lazy. It's very lazy. It doesn't want to move too much. So you see, the egg or ovum will only move this much. But the sperm is very smart. Egg is also smart. Egg is also smart. Okay. So
I've heard it all.
more girls here. So.
Egg is lazy.
Yep, I remember.
We're all eggs.
Sperm are like
That's true.
overachievers.
Alright.
Yeah.
Okay. So they sperm, they travel thousands and all want to get to the egg, only one egg. Okay. So egg is more, you know.
It's always smart here.
Yeah, egg is I say more precious.
So it's kind of like birds and bees. It's like a drone. He has to fly away in the sky to get a queen bee, and you know, it's just he does all that work and he's got all that competition. It's
Right,
only
right,
one
right.
guy
Yeah.
just
One way,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
nature birds and bees.
yeah.
So she's being coy, so what?
It's tough.
Okay.
So,
So one egg, but many sperm. They all run very fast to reach to the egg. Okay, and interestingly, once the fastest one, the sperm, will stick to the surface of the egg. Actually, a number will get stick, but the one will reach to the inside, then others will not move anymore. Okay? So they will, like, you know, many people are running and you have only one prize, then if you see someone has already reached there, then others will stop. Like, there is no point of running like that. So it's like that. Many sperms will get there and will start to dig the wall of the egg, but once the first one will reach there, then others will get inhibited. Anyway, so that's the fertilization that will take place inside the ampulla of the fallopian tube. Then what will happen? The fertilized egg will start to move towards the uterus. Okay? So we'll start to. It's like that if your friend from another place calls you and tell I am coming to see you, right? Then what you do? First thing, you will make sure that he will stay at night, he or she, and you will make a soft bed, right? To make he stay comfortable. So exactly the same thing happens. This is the house. This is your house, and your friend will come. So you will make the bed very soft. Okay? So that happens inside the uterus. The endometrium, the innermost layer, becomes thick and very soft. Okay? Complete. And fertilized egg starts to, like you are going to meet at the airport. So this is the airport. You are going to meet your friend, and after you meet your friend, you will bring your friend to your house. Okay? So you together you are coming to the house. That's
Maybe
the
we should
uterus.
tell stories, because I could really make it interesting.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. So the uterus has different parts. Now we'll see the parts of the uterus. So this is the uterus, is a hollow muscular organ. It has a cavity inside, and the upper dome-shaped part of the uterus, that is called the fundus. You have seen the fundus of the stomach too, right? The upper dome-shaped part, that is the fundus. And then the body of the uterus, this part is called the body of the uterus. And then you see, if you look carefully, this part got constricted, like someone has pushed and made it a little bit narrow. And that constricted part is called the isthmus. Okay? That's the isthmus. And the lowermost part, that is called the cervix of the uterus. The cervix of the uterus. And inside the cervix of the uterus, you have the canal. That is called the cervical canal. So this part is the cervix, and the canal is the cervical canal. Okay? And the cavity inside the uterus, that's the lumen or cavity of uterus.
Professor,
Yes.
are the muscular walls of the cervix thicker than the muscular walls of the uterus?
Not necessarily. The one thing, just know that the wall of the uterus is not, the thickness is not fixed. Okay? Thickness is not fixed. When the bed is made, that time it is very thick. And when the bed is removed, that's the menstruation destroyed. Then the wall becomes thick. Okay, so now we'll see the wall of the uterus. The uterus wall has 3 layers. The innermost layer is called the endometrium. Endo means inside. And middle thick layer, that is called the myometrium. Myo means muscle. And outermost layer, that is called perimetrium. Okay, so endometrium, myometrium, and perimetrium. Now, the endometrium is not, the thickness of endometrium changes. The thickness of the endometrium changes a lot. Like you are making the bed, right? When you make the bed, the thickness increases.
During pregnancy or menstrual?
No, every time when the ovulation occurs, ovarian cycle, your uterus is preparing the bed. If fertilization doesn't occur, if your friend does, then last moment you have gone to the airport to see your friend, and if your friend calls, oh, I'm not coming today. Then what will you do? You'll come to your home and remove the bed, right? Destroy the bed. Probably you won't destroy, but you will remove the bed, right? You'll get angry. So every time your uterus is preparing nice bed, in every menstrual cycle, during the ovarian cycle, your uterus is preparing nice bed, and most of the time the fertilization is not occurring and you are destroying the bed. That is the menstruation. When you destroy the bed, the tissue and blood gets out from the body. Okay? So that's the menstruation. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the endometrium, and this layer is not fixed. this layer changes, okay? Gradually grows and then destroyed, and again grows and destroyed. If fertilization occurs, then it will stay there, okay?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Endometriosis, that's when the lining, there is a condition called endometriosis.
Yes, that's
And
the,
what happens there? When you have that condition?
I don't exactly remember that.
Okay.
The lining migrates,
Migrates.
the tissue, the lining migrates.
So uneven or
Yeah, it can be uneven, it can like build up, or it can also go like into the tubes on the
Oh,
outside,
okay.
you know, whatever the tissue is,
And it causes pain
from what I understand.
from during menstrual or all the time, you don't know? Just curious.
okay. So the endometrium is not fixed and it changes. The thickness of the endometrium changes. Okay. Now the cervical canal has two mouths. Os indicates mouth. Okay, mouth or opening. So the outer one, this is called the external os. And here, this one, where the cervical canal is connected to the lumen of the uterus, this opening is called the internal os or internal inner mouth, outer mouth and inner mouth. So cervical canal has two os or two mouths. Now, you know that during labor, doctors, they measure the opening, the size, diameter of the opening here, right? So they see how much opening has been taken place. And by looking that, they can tell that, yeah, this is the time for delivery. Okay. Okay, now endometrium, that innermost layer, changes, and innermost layer has two sublayers. Endometrium has two sublayers. What are those? Stratum functionalis and stratum basalis. So endometrium has two layers, stratum functionalis and stratum basalis, or functional layer and basal layer. The functional layer changes and basal layer is fixed. So what happens, if this is the basal layer, this layer is fixed, will not change, and on the basal layer, the functional layer will grow, will get thicker, will grow, and then what will happen if fertilization doesn't occur? It will be destroyed, right? It will be destroyed, and it will again come back to this,
Fixed.
yeah,
Basal.
to basal, and then again it will grow, and again will be destroyed and will come to the basal layer. Okay, so the functional layer, this layer, changes. Okay, grows and destroyed, grows and destroyed. Okay,
No annihilation.
yeah. Okay, and another important thing here is that growth of functional layer and destruction of functional layer, both are controlled by the hormones, estrogen, progesterone. Those hormones help in the growth and destruction. We'll see how. Okay, so just know that those are done or controlled by the hormones, estrogen, progesterone.
Not inhibin.
The inhibin has different functions.
So this layer just responds to estrogen and
Estrogen,
progesterone.
progesterone.
Thank you.
So the stratum, the functional layer.
Yeah. And estrogen, progesterone comes from where? Two sources. One is the fixed organ, from the fixed organ, that's the ovary. Ovary produce, in first lecture I told you that gonads, testes and ovaries produce sex hormones, right? So estrogen, progesterone come from ovary and
The corpus luteum.
corpus luteum. That's the temporary gland. Do you remember that? So from two sources, the female sex hormones are released during the cycles. Now, this is the endometrium. Okay, so you see the functional layer and the basal layer. This is the functional layer. This is the basal layer. And while the functional layer is destroyed, how the functional, I have mentioned that functional layer will be destroyed, right? But how the functional layer, or why the functional layer is destroyed? That destruction is of course controlled by hormones, but what the hormones do, you see here, if you see the blood supply to the endometrium, this is the uterine artery, right? And from the uterine artery, the arcuate artery is a branch of uterine artery, and from the arcuate artery, radial arteries are formed and they enter into the endometrium. And from the radial arteries, two types of arteries or branches are formed. One type is spiral, it's not straight, it's spiral. Those are called coiled or spiral arteries. And another type of arteries are formed from radial, those are straight, so those are called straight arteries. Okay? Straight and spiral arteries. Now, what happens, what causes the destruction of this layer is constriction of the root of the spiral arteries. Okay. So if you constrict here, the root of this spiral artery, then what will happen? The blood will not be able to go to the tissue here, right? So that tissue will die, due to lack of blood supply, right? Necrosis of tissue, tissue will die and will be destroyed easily. Dead tissue will not stay there, right? So it will be destroyed. So that's the mechanism of destruction of the functional layer of the endometrium. Constriction of the spiral arteries, the beginning or root of the spiral arteries will occur, and that will decrease the blood or stop the blood supply to the functional layer tissue, and the tissue will die and destruction will occur. Okay? Now, this tissue in the functional layer contains, of course, the dead, the cells or tissues. Also, a lot of glands are present here. Okay? A lot of glands are present and blood vessels. And that's why when menstruation occurs, you see the tissue as well as a lot of destroyed blood vessels and glands and blood. When blood vessels will be destroyed, the blood will also be there, right? So in menstruation, you see dead tissue, glands, destroyed blood vessels, and blood. Okay, so those are the components of menstruation. Vagina has 3 layers in the wall, and the outermost layer is the fibroelastic adventitia, and middle layer is a smooth muscle muscularis layer, and innermost layer is the epithelial layer, and it has stratified squamous type of epithelium. And you know that I mentioned many times, in those areas the chance of friction is there. The epithelial lining should be stratified squamous. So that will be stratified squamous type of epithelium. Okay. And okay. So this is the vagina, and if you look carefully, you will see mucosal folds or foldings are present, and those are called the uvea. And this area between the wall of the vagina and the cervix of the uterus, you see that space that is called fornix. Okay, so lateral fornixes around the cervix of the uterus, but those are the parts of the vagina. Yeah, fornix. Okay, now oogenesis. Oo indicates oocyte or egg, and genesis is the production. It's like spermatogenesis, very similar. Oogenesis is the process of production of mature egg or ovum or oocyte. Each month after puberty, a few primary oocytes are activated, and one is selected each month to resume meiosis 1, and that will produce first meiosis 1. When I showed you meiosis in last class, meiosis will do what?
Make two identical.
Right. Finally, how many will get? 4. In meiosis, we'll get finally 4. But how many stages are in meiosis? Meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. Meiosis 1 will produce, this is meiosis 1, 2 cells. Okay. Then from those 2 cells, and meiosis 2 will get total how many? 4. Okay. 4. Now this is 2n. That means 46, right?
Yeah.
And meiosis 1 will reduce the number to
23.
Okay? And but in these 4, you will have same number. So meiosis does what? Reduces the number to half. In new cell, you get half number of chromosome, number 1. Number 2, how many phases are in meiosis? 2. Meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. And when both phases are completed, then total how many new cells you get? 4 from one cell. Okay? And each has haploid or half number of chromosomes.
The 4, do they each have 23 also?
Each, yes,
Right,
23.
each,
Yeah.
24.
Yeah, 23.
Half.
23, yes.
So
That's
the only
right.
time they have 46 is
Mitosis.
mitosis.
Yes, mitosis. And okay, now when during oogenesis, when meiosis will occur, first meiosis 1 will occur, the cytoplasm will, most of the cytoplasm will go to one side, not to the other one. So this one is the healthier one, right? Because most of the cytoplasm or matrix will go here, and this one is called the polar body. So this is the first polar body, okay? And this is the healthy egg or oocyte. So remember, that's the difference. Now you see here. So this is meiosis 1, and you see meiosis 1 will produce 2 new cells, but one is the polar body, the weak one, and this is the healthier one. That's the secondary oocyte. Okay? And then both of them will divide. Right? And polar body will produce 2 new polar bodies. Both are inactive or weak. And the healthy one, secondary oocyte, will produce, again, most of the matrix will go to one side, and this one will be the polar body, right? So only one healthy oocyte will get, and 3 polar bodies we will get by meiosis. Okay? So when meiosis will be completed, we will get 3 polar bodies and 1 healthy. Okay, now just know these names, stages, okay? Primordial follicle, then the primary follicle, secondary follicle, Graafian follicle, we have seen those before. Graafian follicle is the most mature one, and you see the antrum or fluid-filled cavity inside the Graafian follicle, and then the Graafian follicle will rupture, okay? And the ovum or egg or oocyte will come out. That is the ovulation. So ovulation will occur, and then the corpus luteum will be formed inside the ovary. That's the yellow structure that works as a temporary gland. Okay. Now, one interesting thing is that ovarian cycle starts in the girl baby when the baby is inside the mother's uterus. So before birth, inside the uterus of the infant, we shouldn't say infant, fetus. So before birth, when the fetus is inside, girl fetus is inside the mother's uterus, the ovulation starts. And you see here, before birth, mitosis will be completed and will be halt there, will be stopped there after first multiplication, mitosis. The cells will no more continue to move. So that is the starting of the ovulation that will occur before birth, and then it will wait for several years, and when the puberty will start, the hormonal changes will take place, then again that cell will start to get mature, continue to get mature. So several years that ovulation will be stopped or will be halted for several years. And then after puberty, the ovulation will start, and in each month you will have one ovary. So one ovum or egg will be formed, okay, from those cells. So that is the interesting thing. So first, the mitosis will do what? Mitosis will just increase the number. Remember, I said that in case of spermatogenesis too, that mitosis will do what? Increase the number, produce new cells, right? From the stem cells. Right? And after many cells are produced, then they will remain there, and those new cells will be produced before birth. Many cells will be produced and will stay there. Then after birth, when the puberty will start, then those cells will one by one will start to get mature.
Is the healthier cell the female, the ovum?
Second?
Is that,
What's the purpose of the polar body?
yeah, is that healthier?
No purpose. Just we need one healthy cell, right?
Okay.
If 4 healthy cells are produced, then it will be confusing for the sperm.
Oh, it's confusing.
Okay? If 4 are fertilized, then 4 embryo will be formed, right?
Okay.
If 4 sperms are many, sperms are
right.
many. So if 4 ovum comes out, then 4 embryo will be formed. We don't want. But what we want? We want to reduce the number of chromosomes, right? So that's why we need the meiosis.
Okay.
We need meiosis to reduce the number of chromosomes, right? but when meiosis will occur, of course the cell number will increase, right? But if all cells are healthy cells, then that will be a problematic.
So the polar bodies are expelled in ovulation as well, but they're ultimately going to degenerate and die.
Only the Graafian follicle will rupture, not others.
Oh.
They will stay. The Graafian follicle.
But not the polar bodies with it? Like they're not encased in the same, no.
Okay, here is the ovulation. Okay?
Right.
So ovulation will occur, and the Graafian follicle, this is the Graafian follicle, that will rupture, okay? And then, after that, another interesting thing will happen. This stage will be seized here, and if the fertilization takes place, you see the sperm, if the fertilization occurs, the sperm fertilizes the egg, then the meiosis 2 will occur here. Okay, so if fertilization doesn't occur, meiosis 2 will not be completed. So to happen, meiosis 2 to happen, the sperm should get should fertilize the egg, and then the meiosis 2 will be completed. So that's why I said that meiosis 2 may or may not occur. Okay, so meiosis 2 will be completed if the egg gets the signal that fertilization has been taken place. You see here, meiosis 2 will be completed if only sperm penetration occurs. Okay, so that will give the signal to the egg that now complete meiosis 2, otherwise not. Okay. Okay. So we have talked about the phases of ovulation, ovarian cycle, follicular phase that lasts 40 days, first 40 days. Then ovulation doesn't need days, right? Ovulation is the what? Rupture of the Graafian follicle. So it will happen very fast. So it doesn't need long time. And luteal phase is another 14 days. So follicular phase first 14 days, then ovulation, then luteal phase is another 14 days. That's why I said that corpus luteum will stay how long? 14 days if fertilization doesn't occur, right? So that's the luteal phase. But if fertilization occurs, then luteal phase will be prolonged, like long 3 months. Why? Because in first trimester of pregnancy, first few months of pregnancy, we need more estrogen progesterone. And who will give that estrogen, additional estrogen progesterone? The corpus luteum. Okay? We need that.
Yes.
Okay. Here you see corpus luteum acts as a temporary gland, and I said that 3 hormones will be produced, right? Inhibin, progesterone, and estrogen. So let's stop here, and we'll talk from here in next class. I'll post a few more slides, and we'll continue. Okay? Yes.
What causes some women when they conceive or when they get pregnant